All right, welcome everybody. I have never seen so many people from this department all in the same room at the same time. This is pretty amazing. So thank you for taking the time out of your days and putting miles on your car and coming down here. So I really appreciate it. So thank you. So today is, I have to confess, I have never given a State of the Department address before, so this is my maiden voyage. So, please be gentle. With that, let me launch in. This is something I've been thinking about quite a bit, and hopefully this will answer some of the questions that have been coming up since I got here, that have been swirling around in people's minds, and then give some idea of kind of how I'm thinking and where I'm hoping that we're going. So this is a love story about this department. So I wanted to tell this department, State of the Department address as a story because our history is important to understanding the context. And as we all know in family medicine, context really matters. And it tells us a lot about who we are, how we see ourselves, why we do what we do, and the way we do things. And then also importantly, what's our legacy from our past and what's our potential for the future? And as I said, context matters, and especially in family medicine, we really understand that. And it's also because people and organizations have life cycles and life stages, and especially in family medicine, we understand that as well. So why is it a love story? That might be a weird title for a State of the Department address. And I thought that was appropriate because this is a love story because in order to move forward, we have to understand our own story and where we are now. It's also to recognize the honor the commitment and passion and indeed love that people in this department bring to our work. And it's also because this story of this department is also connected to why I chose to come to Colorado and why every week I fall more in love with this department. And that's because of the people of DFM and their commitment and their passion for the work that we do, and also for the exciting potential I see ahead of us. And finally, I had to tell the story of our past so that we can understand our present, and then also to start to look forward to our future. So starting with our distant past, I want to tell the story of that distant past so that we can really understand where we're going. So I'm going to start this story with our origin story of the Department of Family Medicine, which I just learned myself not that long ago. Our origin story began with an unwelcome environment, a somewhat traumatic birth. We were originally a division in the Department of Internal Medicine, and the CU School of Medicine at that time didn't want a Department of Family Medicine. They thought it was better if we just stayed a division in internal medicine. But the people of Colorado had a different idea, that the people of rural Colorado had healthcare needs and they needed family doctors. They knew they needed what family doctors provided, and they needed a department of family medicine. So these ranchers, farmers, and other advocates banded together, and they went to the Colorado legislature to push for creation of the Department of Family Medicine. The School of Medicine pushed back, but these rural advocates, they didn't give up. They pushed hard, very hard in fact. So hard that the Colorado legislature eventually gave School of Medicine a very stark choice. Create a Department of Family Medicine in order to receive the school's state funding allocation. So with that potential consequence in front of them, the School of Medicine relented and agreed to create the Department of Family Medicine. So what did that mean for us? We had to fight our way to the table. We needed a leader with the courage to fight, a leader who would take on tough opponents, had passion to fight against the odds, was powered by inspiration and conviction, and had the burning will and determination to not back down. We needed a Larry Green. Now, after a traumatic birth and the fighting spirit of the Larry Green era, we come to our little more recent past. Larry got us to the table Now we're at the table, but we don't really have a voice. DFM was a small department. We were easy to forget, easy to ignore, easy to leave out. Our leadership energy was spent from fighting our way to the table. So now we're in a different place in our life cycle. To have a voice, we needed to become too big and too important to forget or ignore. We needed to grow. We needed to become too big, too integrated into our institutions, and too essential to ignore. To do this, we needed to be everywhere, connect and partner as much as possible, be everything to everybody, become indispensable, and become too big to shut out or ignore. Now, at this different stage in our DFM life cycle, we needed a different leader with new energy and far, far-seeing vision. A leader whose imagination had no limits, no guardrails, no boundaries. We needed a leader with the courage to boldly go where no man, woman, or family medicine department had gone before. We needed somebody with outward bound courage, a leader who could see farther than the rest with his own crystal ball. He had the rosiest of rose-colored glasses, for whom anything is possible, who was willing to gamble on long odds, and was powered by his imagination of the future possibilities. We needed Frank Degree. So just look at all that the people of this department have accomplished over the past decades. Major growth and achievements in each of our mission areas: clinical practice, education, research, community engagement. We are truly now too big and important to ignore. And not only locally with our institutions, but look at who we are on the national stage in terms of leadership at our organized family medicine organizations, at the state level. We are represented in so many places in so many important ways. We have highly competitive fellowships, residencies. Our faculty are senior leaders in CU Medicine and UC Health. We have a lot to be proud of. And we are consistently a top-ranked department. And after 20 years of this continuous growth and new partnerships, we had to and became more focused on each of our individual programs and our mission areas. But that came at a cost of getting more siloed in our mission areas. And more recently, people began saying, you know what, we want to be more connected. That discussion and sentiment was beginning to emerge. And now to our immediate past. And then came the pandemic. As a Department of Family Medicine faculty, residents, fellow students, and staff, we have the heart to serve those that are underserved, to promote social justice, health equity, provide care for everyone in need. And for decades, our work in healthcare has brought us face to face with the things that were unveiled to the rest of the world around inequities in healthcare. The impacts of systemic racism, gender inequity, and poverty. Health problems begin with and are aggravated by so many other factors besides clinical care, from housing to hunger, education to employment. If there was ever any lingering doubt about the systemic inequities of healthcare, this pandemic laid them bare. This pandemic challenged us, frightened us, like nothing else before. We were tested in ways we could not have foreseen. We rose to meet the needs of others in ways we could not have imagined. We gave of ourselves far above and beyond what we thought was possible. We saw and experienced things that still haunt us. We sacrificed personally as well as professionally. And the pandemic lasted longer than any of us thought it would. I remember in the beginning, I thought, a couple months, we'll be back to normal. Well, now it's 2.5 years later. So surge after surge, it kept coming back like a bad dream. But despite all of this, we held together and helped each other take care of our patients, our learners, our community members, and each other. But this strength that held us together came at a great cost. Our people are weary. After 2 years of pandemic waves, it's taken a huge toll. We need time and space to regroup, reconnect, and re-energize. We also need time and space to reassess ourselves, our needs, our goals, and our priorities. And now that brings us to our present. The future depends on what we do in the present. After Frank retired, it was a long search for the next chair. And then finally, after waiting and waiting, yikes, a new chair. Whoa, what's happening? Myra is really different from Frank. She looks different, obviously. She thinks differently. She sees things differently. Her style is very different than Frank. So I hear you. I underestimated how different a new chair would feel to this department. And I apologize to all of you for not recognizing sooner how difficult this transition has been for everyone, including myself. I'm still learning a lot about our culture, our people, how best to learn the DFM culture and our people without scaring you all, how best to ask my questions and deliver my message so we can better hear each other and understand each other. You can't go back and change the beginning, but you can start where you are and change the ending. Because history and context matter, I want to share a little bit about my origin story so you know more about where I come from and what I bring to this new role as your chair. I was born and raised in Tucson, Arizona, where I lived almost all my life until I moved to Colorado just over a year ago. I was born and raised in the Sonoran Desert, but I also grew up doing lots of camping, hiking, and fishing with my family in the mountains. So I love the mountains. Coming to Colorado was not a big change in that sense. Growing up, I'm a grandchild of immigrant laborers from China and Japan. I grew up in a city that also celebrates its cultural diversity. Both of my parents were highly engaged in local civic and cultural affairs, so I grew up exposed to lots of diversity: race, ethnicity, religion, culture, language, sexual orientation, politics, and socioeconomic status. And this has truly been one of my life's greatest blessings. Gender equity. My mother's traditional Chinese family believed it was only important to educate boys. She competed fiercely with her brothers for access to education and to learn skills like learning to drive. So she modeled that independence from gender-defined cultural roles and societal stereotypes, teaching me, I could be any profession I chose if I was willing to work hard enough. And until my senior year in high school, I actually was more interested in the visual arts and writing poetry. But then what happened? When I was 12, my mother's health began to fail from diabetes. And by high school, I was a major caregiver, spending lots of time with doctors and in hospitals. And all that exposure got me interested in medicine. And by the time I enrolled in college, I had changed from a fine arts to a science major. Then when I was 18, my mother suddenly died of a cardiac arrest while on dialysis in the very hospital where I trained for my residency in medical school. So she had lots of good doctors who took care of all her parts, but there was not a doctor who took care of her, who she was as a whole person, including her role as a mother, a wife, the strong-willed matriarch of our family. So when I applied to medical school, I knew I wanted to be a family physician. So when I interviewed to become your chair, I was asked, "Who are you?" I said my primary professional identity is that I am a family doctor. I chose family medicine for my career because of my experience with my mother. I know firsthand what matters in sickness and in health. And I believe that our family medicine perspective is what patients and healthcare needs. I'm a family doctor first and foremost, but I'm also a researcher, trained and mentored by 3 anthropologists. And I've had the great blessing to work in global health. And all these experiences have taught me many things and shaped how I look and see things and go about doing things. For example, always try to stay curious. The importance of sustainability to really build capacity. And that cultures are nested within cultures, and they're not always obvious. One of the things I'm very aware of is that I'm the first woman and person of color to lead this department. It's a huge honor. It's truly a privilege, but it's also a tremendous responsibility that I take very seriously. And I'm also really aware and grateful that I stand on the shoulders of giants, the DFM leaders that came before me. But because my background experience is different than those leaders that came before me, I have a different vantage point to look into our future and who we could be as a Department of Family Medicine. My background experience gives me a platform and perspective to see different things, to look at the same things and see them differently, and to look in different directions, both outward and inward. Our future is here now. The challenges and opportunities ahead of us are not the same as they were before. Part of my job as your chair is to keep looking forward and farther as far as I can see. What I see is we are heading into a future that is rapidly evolving in healthcare, primary care, clinical education, research, and community engagement. Our environment is changing quickly both in our institutions and well beyond. Our environment is shifting about social justice and health equity. There's new attention and energy both locally, nationally, and even globally. There's a new generation of medical students who are committed to these values. And our own institutions have made major investments in equity, diversity, inclusion, and to health equity. And now there's actual formal and large organizational structures that are dedicated to these values. And those include the Anschutz Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Community Engagement, the Aurora Wellness Community, formerly known as the Aurora Community Health Commons, and the soon-to-be stood-up Anschutz Center for Health Equity. Our environment is also shifting for our clinical education, research, community work. All of our academic missions are going to be impacted. Some of these changes, Intermountain Health merged with SLC. You probably heard about that. They're a fierce competitor, a well-run health system, and they're coming to Denver in Colorado. The leadership of UCH and CU Med are working on aligning, and collectively they have set a goal of being a top 10 academic medical center in the U.S., which also means a willingness to invest in research. There's a new medical school in northern Colorado that's going to be competing for clinical training sites. Denver Health will start a new residency that's going to be offering training focused on the urban underserved. And we have the potential for a new family medicine residency at Highlands Ranch Hospital. But even as the world around us is rapidly changing, right now we ourselves are in transition. We're between ending the old and beginning the new. And we're in what's called the wilderness zone. And it feels uncomfortable. It's normal to feel uncomfortable and uncertain when in the wilderness zone, and anxious. So that raises a question, where are we going? My vision is that DFM is a learning organization. This definition begins with a simple truth. New ideas are essential if learning is to take place. My vision is that we are very skilled at creating, acquiring, and transferring knowledge, and at modifying our behaviors to reflect new knowledge and insights. My vision is that we're able to learn from our successes and our failures, that we're not afraid to try, to make mistakes, learn from our mistakes, and move on. I want us to be able to celebrate our successes without getting complacent, and that we are moving towards greater integration, synergy, and harmony. So why is this my vision? So that we're able to evolve and adapt and respond to the environment that's going to change around us, whether we like it or not, and so that we can continue to thrive into the coming future. There are 5 key traits that will transform us into a learning organization that are on this infographic. Systems thinking, which is collaborative learning culture. Mental models, mental flexibility to unlearn unwanted values, to make room for new and more applicable ones. A shared vision to focus and energize our learning. Personal mastery, maintaining a mindset of lifelong learning for each and every one of us. And team learning, share our individual learning to build team knowledge collectively. And from practicing these 5 traits comes continuous learning, improvement, and innovation. So to be a learning organization, we need to shift our courage from outward bound to inward introspective. A different kind of courage. And to put it plainly, to have courage, by definition, means stepping outside one's comfort zone. So we can choose courage or we can choose comfort, but we don't get to choose both. Becoming a learning organization calls on us to have a different kind of courage than we may have had before. Courage to look within at ourselves and each other. Who are we now? Who do we want to be? How do we want to be with ourselves and each other? Courage to look again at what we're doing and why. To ask ourselves, is this the highest and best use of our people, time, space, energy, money, and other resources? Courage to look anew at how we do things. How can we create more integration, synergy, harmony across all our mission areas? How can we communicate better with clarity, honesty, and kindness? And how do we share knowledge, learn together, grow together, and evolve together? To become a learning organization, we have to step up and lean into who we are as a Department of Family Medicine. We're not victims or underdogs, we're players. We know the value we contribute to our larger organizations and our communities. We can summon the courage and ready ourselves for the multiple opportunities and challenges that lie ahead. So what are these opportunities and challenges? In our clinical practice, we've been promised a new DFM innovation clinic that our teams have already started to work on. The new Aurora Wellness Community Clinic. We've been asked as a department to be the lead operational partner on that clinic. And that tells you we've arrived. They asked us. They didn't ask anybody else on this campus. The challenges ahead, making the commitment to serve a much larger Medicaid and underserved population than we have in the past. And how do we innovate and deliver holistic models of care to all our patients? In education, the opportunity to continue leading in the new LIC, the TREC community, how to develop interprofessional education, GME, UME, and behavioral health. The new Aurora Clinic is a place we hope to do that. Starting a new family medicine residency at Highlands Ranch. Challenge, where are we going to train our learners? What are the clinical training sites as the competition for them becomes more intense? And how do we think broadly and innovate for new career pathway programs into the healthcare industry, not just the healthcare professions? How do we continue to attract and inspire the best and brightest of our medical students to choose careers in family medicine? In research, the opportunities are to grow a DFM-wide culture of curiosity and inquiry, to expand our clinical trial research, to develop a focus in health disparities research. Our challenges, how do we continue to support our practice-based research networks in the new world and changed world of primary care? We have a consultation going on right now to help us with that. How do we use dissemination implementation science to bring healthcare innovation to the underserved, who need it the most and often get it the last? And for community, what is our opportunity to identify what's the unique core competencies and contributions of this Department of Family Medicine? How do we strategically place what we're doing amid the many entities now working in the community engagement across the campus and across the state? And how do we decide and find our highest and best use of our DFM talents to advance community work in meaningful, impactful, and doable ways? There's a lot already happening and more is coming down the road ahead. The really great news is that because of who we are and what we've accomplished already, we're in a great place to meet our future. Resources. People always, their mind jumps to resources. And I want us to think way more than money. It's our people, first and foremost. But our time, our space, our money, our reputation, our importance to others, our relationships we've built and have yet to build, and our energy. New things take energy, and that's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. We have a lot of resources, And we have to learn to think broadly about them, yet carefully about how we're going to use them to their highest and best use. Our resources are many, but they're not unlimited. And that means we'll need to focus. We'll always be thinking about all the things in the world of family medicine, primary care, and beyond that we're concerned about. But with that global context in mind, we'll need to focus in on acting local with the resources we have. So how are we going to do this? Together, we'll develop a strategic plan. It'll be our map out of the wilderness of transition. It'll be developed with very broad and inclusive input from the people of DFM. We're a large group of people, and so we'll have to have multiple ways of gathering your input. But at the end of the day, I want us all to be able to say, I had a chance to give my input. Now, whether you take it or not is your individual responsibility, but I want everybody to have a chance to have their input. Our strategic plan is going to be a living document. It's not just a pretty binder on the shelf. We're going to revisit it at least 3 or 4 times a year to monitor progress towards our goals. The progress will be shared widely across the department so we all know where we're going and if we're making progress. And our plan has to have flexibility. That's why it's a living document, to evolve our goals and our strategy to respond to a changing environment, because our environment's not going to stand still. So our plan can't stand still. So how are we going to develop our plan? We're going to start with re-examining our foundation to make sure it's solid. These are the foundations of a strategic plan. Purpose. Why does our department exist? Why do we do what we do? What's our North Star? Vision. What's our aspirational but achievable vision for DFM? What do we want to be or have accomplished in the next 10 years? Our mission. This is about specifically what are we doing now to reach our goals? What do we do as our core competencies? Who do we serve? Who are our core constituents? How do we serve them in a way that is unique and special to this Department of Family Medicine? In other words, what's our secret sauce? And underlying our purpose, vision, and mission are our core values. We need to take the time to define, affirm, or reaffirm our DFM core values. What are they? What do we actually mean when we say these values? We can throw a lot of words around, but we might not agree or be thinking the same thing about what they mean. And what behaviors will flow from these values? Because our values plus our behaviors is what defines and creates our culture as a Department of Family Medicine. So since our strategic plan is a living document, we will be revisiting it regularly. I said at least 3 to 4 times a year. When we do that, we'll look at our indicators of progress to see if we're moving towards achieving our goals and our objectives. We need to stay curious and ask, are the goals and objectives, do they still make sense? Are they still the right ones? Or have we or the environment shifted in a way that we need to evolve our goals and objectives to be current and relevant? And we'll need to stay curious about our strategies and tactics. If our goals are still the right ones, but our strategies and tactics, do they need to evolve? Because things will continually change. So to conclude, I want to go back to why I've titled my talk today, A Love Story. So I said that each week I fall more in love with this department because of our people and the commitment and passion, and I believe the love that you all bring to the work we do together. I believe that what keeps us going, what has kept us going, especially when the going got very tough these last couple of years, is that we're all here because we want to make a difference. We want to have an impact that matters through the work we do in family medicine. So with that, I thank you, and thank you for all you do for our patients, our learners, our community members, and for each other. Okay.
Myra, what are our strategic initiatives for the next 3 to 5 years? in our department?
We have not defined them. That's what the strategic plan is about. And you're probably all annoyed with me because since I got here, you've been asking, what's your vision? What's your vision for the department? I've had that question so many times. And I think I've pretty consistently said, I don't have my vision. It's not about my vision. It's about our vision. My vision for us is to be a learning organization and that we will develop this plan and our strategic initiatives together. We'll only be our best and highest, achievements through doing this together.
Thank you, Myra. I have a question. When you were talking about serving in the community and you're talking about the new innovation clinic or the AWC, you talked about holistic care, and I would love to hear more about what your thoughts are on that.
What's exciting about the Aurora Wellness Community, the AWC, is its goal is to have a different and more holistic approach to health. We in family medicine know that, as Frank would say, health is won and lost in the community, not inside the clinic or hospital walls. So how do we address that? The answer is we don't know yet. That's part of the innovation. But I would say there's a really serious commitment by the College of Medicine or the School of Medicine, investing significant resources into how do we do this as a better model. And we're building it as we're flying it. One of the things I'll comment, one of the things that's happened that I've become aware of since coming here, I think some time ago, family medicine was probably one of the lone voices in the wilderness saying, community matters, you need to be talking to community people. Well, one of the things that's exciting, but also makes the environment dynamic and potentially confusing is there's a lot of folks out there doing stuff in the community. I can think of 4 or 5 different entities, programs that have community somewhere in the title. So then the question I raise is, okay, what are we all doing? Can we not bump into each other? But then really for us to ask ourselves as family medicine, it's back to the secret sauce question. I don't want us to be a Me Too department. We're doing it because everybody else is, because I think we have something unique to contribute because of who we are and how we see the world. So how does that manifest in terms of our community work? I don't have the answer to that. I'm hoping that we will think hard and open our hearts and discover that together. But I don't know, because it's getting crowded out there.
Hi, Myra. Deb Seymour. I'm just far enough away from the department to ask a really weird question like this, although my heart is still deeply in the department, so I hope it doesn't get crushed. But I'm really curious, you mentioned the history of family medicine, and as family medicine as a revolution that grew in some ways unwanted into the world of medicine. And a lot of the older folks in the room, myself among them, feel very attached to family medicine as a revolution in medicine. I'm not that old yet, but it seems like we need a revolution. So my question for you is, if you were going to lead a family medicine-led revolution at University of Colorado School of Medicine, what would the flag say?
Oh, God, what a great question. I know, that's a really good question. I'll have to think about that one. Kind of one of the things that pops into my mind is, but I don't know if this is where I would wind up, is history and context matters. The whole story matters, and that's why I choose to talk today and tell a story. And one of the things that I would ask us to look at ourselves and say, are we ready to move beyond the trauma of a traumatic birth? We're not victims anymore, guys. We're not unwanted. We're not underdogs. We're players in a big way. And is it time to step up and own that? Step into our power and own it. We know we have something really valuable to contribute. And increasingly other people are recognizing it. Like I said, when they needed a new partner for the Aurora Wellness Center, they came to family medicine first.
In terms of the strategic plan, do you have any thoughts about when that might get started or how it might get started, or is that part of it that we figured that out too, like how it happens?
That's part of it, and that's one of the things I think is a responsibility of our executive leadership team. And by the way, we've decided to rename ourselves from the executive committee to the executive leadership team, and that's to describe who we are, the executive leaders of the department. And, what are we doing there? We're leading the department. And how are we doing it? We're doing it as a team, not as a committee. Teams and committees are different things, and they operate differently. They think about things differently. So that's part of our task, to design a process that's broad-based and inclusive. Like I said, we're a big department, so we're going to have different ways for people to give their input. And we'll have to figure that out, what's logistically possible. And the other thing too is the timing to get that in place. And also, we're still without a DFA. We're interviewing candidates. It'd be great to have somebody in place before we start that process. But I don't want to wait too long. I mean, I'm hearing pretty consistently is, along with what's your vision, it's like, what's the plan? Well, it's not my plan. It's going to be our plan. So, and I'm feeling the energy like we want to get started here,
Thank you, Myra. Could you say a little more about where things stand with the evolving Aurora Community Commons? I'm probably not using the right word, combo, but the evolving commons. I've lost track a little bit in terms of whether some of the core features that were part of the initial vision with like a residency, scholarship, education, training, et cetera. Are those like bricks of foundation that are still going to be there, or is the vision kind of changing? And also, it's interesting that you mentioned the landscape of the other family medicine residency programs to be born at Denver Health and Highlands Ranch, and so I was just wondering how these different pieces kind of fit together.
Yeah, great question. It's evolving. The original plan, and actually this project is one of the reasons I decided to come to Colorado, because it's innovative, it's a new way of looking at health, and I really felt there was a strong institutional commitment behind it and a multi-year commitment. And then for lots of reasons, the original plan, the partner was Salud, the FQHC, the operational partner for the clinic, and you probably heard some things about that, and the clinic struggled, and so that's when the school needed a new operational partner. And Fulbriggy sort of came to me and said, hey, would you guys be willing? And, it's an opportunity, I think, that is an important one, but one we need to be ready for. I talked to members of our team and said, yeah, we think we can do this. We want to do it. Part of the planning is what's the sequencing. I think the vision is still to have an interprofessional education place with multiple residencies. But one of the things we learned before is you got to get the clinic up and running before you can put learners in it. And that didn't really happen. And the other thing is to really get a clinic up and out of the ground, from scratch, you need to have anchor providers. You can't build a clinic with people that are, 0.2, 0.3. You really need people that, this is their thing. They're committed and they're doing that. And so it's a different model to get it going. And then after that's all going, then I think we'll kind of go around again and say, who still wants to play in terms of the residency slots? That's still unclear to me. Right now, I believe we're the only department that's interested in starting a Highlands Ranch residency. But I think they want to take some fellows there, but I don't know about other residencies. So, we got to think about that. It's a big undertaking to start up a residency. On the other hand, in the last couple of years, we had 3 residencies and we lost the Rose one and then the Swedish one. So there's some interest in that. And then the Denver Health, they've wanted a residency for a long time. They have a planning grant now. And it's been one of Lucy Loomis's goals to get a residency going, have enough people on board to have their own inpatient service. But it'll be a very different experience, and so we got to figure out what does that mean for our Denver Health track, because then we'll have, and we don't know. We haven't kind of talked those things through. Oh, and there's still a lot of talk for the rural wellness community about the pillars are, it's healthcare, it's healthy food, it's generational care, it's wealth building, it's career paths. So there's still this holistic view, but you can't do everything all at once. And one of the things that the school and the people involved have been very consistent about is we need to partner a lot. I mean, affordable housing is not the core competency of a school of medicine. We should not get into that business. We should partner with people that is their core competency. But the goal is to start with the clinic, a primary care clinic, and Carrie Mater and Colleen have really kind of been heading up our team that's working on that.
Myra, you mentioned the moving in of Intermountain Health and how that's affecting kind of the landscape in terms of the larger healthcare organizations in the state. How, in your conversations with folks with UC Health, is there a place for us in their vision of how we can help them to continue to be competitive?
I think there is. I'm not sure they see it yet. I think part of our job is owning the value that we bring and learning how to communicate that in a way that people who run hospitals understand. But I'm thinking there's an opportunity because Intermountain Health, they're a 33 hospital system. They're been known in the industry for a long time for having high quality, and they have their own. They're kind of like a Kaiser. They have their own payer platform, and so what that means is they sell insurance and then they provide the services. And once you're doing that, the calculation around the value of family medicine and primary care changes, because that means every time the cardiologist took care of blood pressure and I could have done it, the organization just lost money, not made money. So it changes things, but these are like the big issues in healthcare. And I think for us to continue to get better and better at communicating in ways that people can understand what our value is. And one of the conversations we just started having is when we open the rural wellness community, there's going to be a good chunk of uninsured patients. I mean, that's kind of the population that's around this campus. They're going to get admitted to the hospital. They're already getting admitted to the hospital and coming in the emergency room. What's our role as family medicine in helping to hopefully keep them out of the hospital, better care transitions when they get out so they don't bounce back in? And those are things that, again, people who are really in the trenches can really think about. And it's a chance for us to innovate. What are better ways to manage that? Get them connected to primary care, address those social determinants and influencers of health that we hope will have the partnerships to work with. But those are still all being built. Thank you again for coming, and appreciate it. And thank you again for your patience and indulgence. And going easy on my maiden voyage of a department address.